All right. Another thank you again to our presenters for their spectacular presentations. We will now begin our question and answer panel to include all presenters from this afternoon's sessions. If you haven't had a chance to enter your questions into the Q&A chat pod, please do so now and we'll answer as many questions as time allows. And so we've had quite a few questions come in already. We'll start with a question that came in addressed for Troy Koo. Troy, will ESG submission eventually be phased out to use FDA Direct for drug listings? Okay, Troy, if you're speaking, we're not quite hearing you yet. Maybe you might be on mute. Okay, and perhaps check for any double mute there. If that might not be working, we can go on to our next question. Okay, so let's see. We'll try another uh, question for a different presenter until we get that troubleshooted. All right. Our next question will go for Dr. Yogesh Paruthi. Question for you. If I update my drug listing SPL in May, do I need to send a blanket no changes notification in June?
Thank you for this question. If a firm updates a drug listing anytime during the calendar year, that listing is certified through December 31st of the following calendar year. So what that means is if the listing was updated in May, a blanket no changes certification does not need to be submitted. Our system just won't even let you allow to select that listing to certify. And just to clarify, blanket no changes certification is only available from October 1st through December 31st and not in the June. Now, since we are talking about the blanket no changes certification, I wanted to remind everyone that blanket no changes certification only affects drug listing. It has no effect on establishment registration renewal. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. We have another question for you, Dr. Pruthi. Where can I find additional requirements about listing updates?
Thanks, Nora. So that is a great question. I noticed a lot of questions coming in related to this topic, such as material changes, etc. So overall, you want to refer to 21 CFR 207.57. That has all the information related to what listing information updates you need to submit when you're updating your SPLs. Thank you.
Thank you again. Another question for you. How do I delist my product?
Thank you for the question. So to delist your product, you want to access your most recent submission accepted SPL that you would like to delist. You want to create a new version. You want to change the marketing status from active to complete. And then the most important thing here is you want to provide the expiration date of the last lot that was manufactured. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And sorry, another question related to that for you. Is it necessary to delist my product even though it's no longer in commercial distribution?
Oh, that's an excellent question. We actually, during our surveillance, we come across a lot of these listings. A lot of times, folks would, um, you know, um, will have their product deactivated. They would never delist them. So please note that you should delist because an inactivated listing is not in compliance. Thank you.
All right, thank you again, Dr. Paruthi, for all those responses. Now we'll go back to Troy Koo to see if we've resolved the audio issue. So again, the question was, will ESG submission eventually be phased out to use FDA Direct for drug listings?
Thank you for the question. Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes.
hear me now? Okay,
Yep, you're
sorry.
good.
Okay, thanks for the question. To the best of my knowledge, I don't think ESG is going to go away anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Another question for you, Choi Kyu. If I need to submit an update on the formula for a previously approved OTC product, what is the process?
Thank you for the question. So to update a listing, you will have to go to the most recent product listing that you want to update, and then click on the new version. And then from there, you should be able to make any change that you would like. Just so keep in mind that anytime you're making a change, especially in the data element section, most likely you're going to require to have a manual override. Okay. So to do that, you can send an email to our SBL team, which is the sbl.fda.hhs.gov. Make sure that you provide, if you're using a CDER Direct, you provide them the submission ID number. If you're using the ESG, then you will provide a core ID number along with the error message and the reason why you're making a change. Thank you.
Thank you again for that response. Another question for you. Our OTC drug products were listed by an outside consultant. We would like to do the annual listing certification. Do we need a new labeler code number?
Thank you for the question. No, you're actually certifying an existing product, so therefore you do not need a new labeler code. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Another question that came in for you. If you have more than one source for a product, which one should you choose as a source for NDC? Or is there a way to list them all, assuming that you are a repacker?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, as of right now, you can only enter one source NDC per product. So if you have two sources, I would suggest send us an email, and then we'll look into this further, and then we can get back to you. Thank you.
Thank you as well for that response. And now we'll address some questions that came in for Dr. Tasneem Hussain. If an establishment relabels a product by definition, this activity will fall under manufacturer. Can the establishment be listed as manufacturer in the SPL and on the labels?
Question, yes. So yes, repackaging and relabeling activities do fall under the overall definition of manufacturing. But if the repackager or relabeler is putting the product in the market under their name and they're distributing it, then the submission must correctly identify the establishment as a repackager or relabeler, sorry. And, so the correct business operation should be chosen. And you can clarify further the business operations using the business operation qualifiers. Thank you.
Thank you for that response. Another question for you. I see that each drug listing must contain the repackaging information. Can you please define the repackaging for me? For example, our manufacturer A is doing the filing and inner packaging for OTC sunscreen products. Then we have transfer products to manufacturer B to add an outer packaging. In this case, does A list need to add the B site as repackaging?
That's a good question too. Thank you. So the definition of repackaging is found under 21 CFR 207.1, along with other definitions such as relabeling. So the definition of repackaging is that it means the act of taking a finished drug product or unfinished drug from the container in which it was placed in commercial distribution and placing it into a different container without manipulating, changing, or affecting the composition or formulation of the drug, So what you're describing here would not be considered repackaging. It would be just another part of the manufacturing process. So site B would not be considered manufacturer or would not be considered a repackager in this situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much as well. We have another question for you, Dr. Hussain. Which marketing category should CMOs use for the products they manufacture and list under their labeler code to avoid confidential information being available on DailyMed?
Okay, that's another good question. Thank you for the question. So contract manufacturers have several choices of marketing categories, and those are usually identified when you see the term product manufactured under contract. You'll be able to spot them from that. So you choose the appropriate choice depending on the type of product you have. For example, if you have an approved drug product manufactured under contract or unapproved drug product manufactured under contract, or it could be an OTC monograph drug product manufactured under contract. So these choices are available, from our structured product labeling resources page, which you can find the link under our office's drug registration and listing webpage. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question for you. If there is a compliance case, then the manual override will not be completed?
That's a good question. Thank you. Yes, so if there's a compliance open, doesn't mean that it won't be completed. It just means that we need to first review the file to make sure that it's been updated and to make sure that the deficiency that we identified has been addressed and resolved. An override won't be completed unless our office approves it first. So this can only happen if we review the file for accuracy and completeness. And then when that's done, when we know that everything has been corrected properly, then we request the override from the SPL coordinator. And then once he performs the override, then at that point, we can close the compliance case. Thank you.
Thank you so much again for the response. Now we have some questions that came in for Dr. Vikas Arora. First question, how do you list a co-packaged product with one component that's an unapproved item?
Thank you for that question. So you will still list this as a kit product, and for the unapproved component, you will select the appropriate unapproved marketing category that applies to that constituent part. Thank you.
Thanks so much for clarifying that. Next question for you. For combination products, e.g. a drug and a pump, both manufactured by different companies, do you have to list the manufacturer of the device and all the establishments that the device company uses for testing?
Thank you for that question. So I'm assuming in this case, the question is referring to co-packaged drug device products. So in this case, if CDER is the lead, you will select kit for the dosage form and identify the constituent parts. For the non-drug components, you will not include an NDC. And regarding the manufacturer's reference, you will include all drug manufacturers only that are involved with the listing. For CDRH requirements, please reach out to them. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. One more question for you, Dr. Arora. We listed a drug product in May and it will be marketed in June. However, we didn't update the product in June. Will the product be inactivated?
Again, thank you for that question. So I'm not sure what the specific situation that is being referenced here, but if your initial listing has correct information with the correct future start marketing date and there are no updates, then the listing is okay. But it won't become an active listing regardless until the start marketing date is reached. But however, if, for example, an establishment reference in these listings becomes inactive, then that listing, after receiving a notification early July of the upcoming July inactivation, will be activated at the end of July unless that relevant establishment is updated accordingly. Please note we encourage listing updates to be made as soon as possible, but at the latest June or December of each year. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those responses. And now we'll move on to some questions that came in addressed to David Mazyck. Let's see, first question here. Sorry, just had it. Okay. My firm has 3 different facilities in the same premises. Do I need to use the DUNS number for the building where manufacturing is taking place for NDC reservations?
Interesting question. Thank you for that. Yes, that DUNS number for the manufacturer, and in this instance, one site location will be referenced in that registration file. And so the reservation would reflect all of the sites that are referenced under that singular DUNS number and the singular FEI that's assigned to that location. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. Next question is for you as well. Is there a way to confirm a proposed product code has not been used before when it is for an already approved product that is adding a new strength or dosage form?
Thanks again for another great question. So in most cases, we strongly encourage firms to maintain, obviously, the inventory under a specific labeler code of all of the products. But in an instance wherein they submit a reservation for a specific uh, product number, the system will provide them with an error message if indeed that product number has already been used, either reserved for another product and or reserved or actually linked to a listed product, a completed listing. Thank you.
Thank you again for that response. Another question for you, or at least addressed to David Mazyck. In this CDER Direct, we understand the NDC reservation can be made at the product code level. Is there an option to reserve the NDC for a new pack count with a future marketing date? As recently we have noticed that listings with a future starting marketing date are appearing in the Daily Med database based on the ANDA start marketing date.
Another great question. So as a caveat to this, keep in mind, these are 2 separate processes. And so the NDC reservation is for pre-market, as I mentioned in my slide, pre-market activities. And so in an instance where a firm has a complete submission, we strongly encourage them to send in a completed drug listing submission, and that will enable them to reference the appropriate start marketing date. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response as well. We do have one more question for you. As part of the NDC reservation process, is the product code initially proposed by the CMO or proposed by FDA, or could it be either?
Great question, and thank you again, Nora. That product code is obviously proposed by the firm. The firm decides which product code they want to assign to specifically to a drug product. The only portion of that NDC that the agency will assign, obviously, is the labeler code. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And now we'll have some questions that came in for Dr. Leyla Rahjou-Esfandiary. First question, this is a question on the 14-day listing requirement after application approval. Is a listing of the product required in the 14-day window? Say an applicant was looking for a distributor of their product at the time of approval, but the FDA reviewer required a listing within 14 days of approval. So the applicant had to request a labeler code for themselves to create NDCs saying they were a distributor listing the product with the start marketing date in the future. So again, could you clarify, is the listing of the product required in the 14-day window?
So I will do my best to address the situation. I have to clarify that FDA does not require listing within 14 days of the approval. What you see in an approval letter that is sent to applicants after a drug is reviewed and approved by FDA is a request to submit labeling within 14 days. And the only way you can submit your labeling to FDA is through the structured product labeling format in your drug listing. So as a result, by default, companies look into drug listing as a way to submit their labeling within 14 days as requested in the approval letter. So what's going to happen is that because the drug listing is tied to commercial distribution of the drug, and you may not start commercial distribution within 14 days for different reasons, what you can do is to list the product, but put a future start marketing date, which is your expected launch date of the product. If anything changes between when you submit that SPL and the actual marketing start date, you can go back and revise the SPL to change some of the elements that you're allowed to change before actually marketing the product.
Thank you so much for that clarification. We have another question for you. What is the time frame for the June review? Is there a plan to institute a window similar to the EOY October to December window for the June review?
So the drug listing review and update has always been the months of June and December. Like many of my colleagues emphasized, we want that information and we recommend that information or any changes are submitted earlier than June or December at the time of change. But if you are waiting for those required timeframes to update your drug listing, it will be the entire month of June and entire month of December. There is no plan in changing it. If we change it ever, there has to be a change in the regulations. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response as well. Another question that is addressed to you, Dr. Leyla, Rahjou-Esfandiary. How do the updates required under CDER Direct correlate to required updates to DailyMed or needed by a CMO and or applicant holder, if any?
So again, that needs to be clarified that DailyMed includes the drug listing submissions to FDA. The drug listing SPLs that are submitted to FDA, certain categories are actually sent to DailyMed, and that happens every weekday in the afternoon. A file is sent to DailyMed, and the drug listing submissions basically are published along with the labeling of those products. So DailyMed does not have any update requirements. The listing requirements and subsequent update requirements to those listing submissions are FDA requirements. So anything that you submit to FDA has to meet the listing requirements, as my colleagues mentioned, under 21 CFR 207, and follow the update requirements. And those updates are then transmitted to DailyMed once they are revised and sent to FDA.
Great. Thank you again for that response. We have one more question for you. If a manufacturer has gone out of business and a PLD wants to submit an end of marketing date listing, how can it be done? The validator only recognizes listings with an active drugs establishment on record.
That is actually not correct. When you're delisting a drug, and so therefore you change the product status to complete, you have to include all manufacturing establishment in the SPL as required under 207, 21 CFR 207, but some of them may actually be out of business or have deregistered already. So our validations are not checking for an active registration for products that are being discontinued.
Thank you so much for that response. And now we'll move on to some questions that came in for Lieutenant Commander Soo Jin Park. First question here for you. Can you explain NDC assignments for co-packaged products and multi-level packaged drugs?
Thank you for that question. I hope I can help clarify NDC assignments to these two types of drugs. As I mentioned in my presentation, for the purposes of drug listing, co-packaged drugs are considered kits. And within a kit, there is a CDER or CBER-led single package of 2 or more different products, basically co-packaged together, where at least one of the co-packaged product is a drug or biological product. Therefore, NDC for the kit should be different than the NDC assigned to any of the individual drugs or biological products included in the kit. As an example, if there is a kit containing 2 single-dose vials for injection and 2 vials of diluent, such as like a phosphate buffering solution, NDC for the kit should be different from NDC assigned to the single-dose vials as well as the diluent. And in addition, if there are any non-drug parts associated with the kit's listing, NDC should not be assigned to non-drug parts. And for multi-level package, which includes different levels of packaging for one drugs, I used the example of a carton containing a blister pack of a solid dosage oral dosage form, or a carton containing multiple vials of an injectable. Since the package code segment of the NDC identifies unique package size and type, you should assign a different package code to each level of packing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. We have another question for you. Can we reuse the NDC after it's been discontinued?
Thank you for that question. We get this question all the time. So NDC cannot be reused after the product has been discontinued. However, as I mentioned in my presentation, if a discontinued drug resumes marketing without any changes made to the previously listed drug, then the previously assigned NDC should be used. Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. One more question for you, Lieutenant Commander Park. When do we need to assign a new NDC for a listed product?
Thank you for that question. Another question that we get all the time. So a new NDC must be assigned to a listed drug product if there are changes to following, and this is identified in 21 CFR 20735 BNC. So any change in drug's established name or proprietary name, if there is a change in active ingredient or strength or dosage form, drug status, drug's intended use, and or any changes to the drug's distinguishing characteristics, such as the color or shape of the tablet. Thank you.
Thank you again. All right, and now we have some questions that came in for Opina Oju. First question for you. For products manufactured by CMOs in finished primary packaged by not secondary packaged, how should this be reported? Okay, we might. Oh, there we go. We can hear you.
Yeah, so thank you. That's a very good question. The obligation to report drug amount reports actually belongs to the registrant, right? So if you're registered and identified in a drug listing file as engaged in the manufacture of a drug, then you're required to submit drug amount report. So it doesn't really matter whether where you are in the supply chain, but if the listing identifies you as engaged as a manufacturer of that product, then you're required to submit drug amount. Thank you.
Thank you for that response as well. We do have another question for you. When a manufacturer or registrant located outside the USA ships bulk quantities of a product to the US for repackaging and distribution under private label NDCs, who all are responsible for the annual volume reporting? Should the manufacturer report bulk finished product quantities released under the bulk NDCs and the US agent who handles the PLD NDCs? Or is the report or is it required to report distributed quantities against each private label NDC?
So thank you again for this question, and I think we get these types of questions a lot from registrants. So I think that the key thing is really to look at the listing for a particular drug, right? So it's about the establishment that is engaged in the manufacture of the drug product. So, and actually that's one of the things we try to clarify in the final guidance, that regardless of where you are in the supply chain, if you are currently registered and you're listed in the listing as engaged in the manufacture of the drug product, then you're required to submit the amount that you yourself manufactured, regardless of what happens downstream with that particular drug product. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. Another question for you. Are OTC drugs such as sunscreens subject to the reporting?
Yes. So all listed drugs are subject to drug amount reporting, except for those that were exempt, but those are mostly biological products. So yes, if the product is listed with FDA, then we expect the registrant, especially the manufacturers, to submit the amount of that drug that they manufactured for that particular calendar year. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And actually, another question for you as well. We are manufacturing an API in Mexico. Do we have to use a new report submission?
So it depends. Again, the drug amount reporting is tied to how a drug is registered and listed with FDA. So if you're an API manufacturer in Mexico and you're identified as the manufacturer of that product, then we expect you to report or submit drug amount report for that product. So it depends on how you're listed in a particular drug as a manufacturer. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much as well. Now we have another question that came in for Dr. Leyla Rahjou-Esfandiary. Does the FDA have an effective date for the new NDC format?
Thank you for that question. We actually got quite a few questions in reference to the effective date. So I need to make sure that we clarify here that what is in place right now is a proposed rule. Please keep that in mind. We are working towards finalizing the rule, and you will know when it's finalized and published. But until then, it remains to be a proposed rule. So there are no effective dates. Everything in the presentation that I had on the NDC format and everything that was discussed about a future format, a possible future format of the NDC is what is proposed. What is proposed now is that the effective date of the final rule after it's published will be delayed for 5 years. So because we don't have a published date, we don't have an effective date yet. But once it's published, it will lay out exactly what the expectations are. If it actually is finalized as proposed or there will be any changes, it remains to be seen.
Thank you very much for that response. Another question for you. Is OTC drug listing or having an NDC for OTC mandatory?
Thank you for that question. So any drug that is subject to drug listing requirements, including OTC drugs, are required to have an NDC. Keep in mind that, as we discussed in our presentations today, inclusion of the NDC on a drug label is not a requirement under labeling requirements. So if you see an OTC drug that does not include an NDC, and one example could be fluoride toothpaste, it doesn't mean it's not assigned an NDC. So let's just make sure we have those two concepts separate, because that fluoride toothpaste is a drug, should be listed, and should have an NDC assigned to it.
Thanks so much. Another question for you. If my product was originally submitted under the OTC monograph not final category and has not been assigned an updated OTC monograph, how should the SPL be updated?
So as I mentioned in my presentation, the old marketing categories for OTC monograph drugs, final and not final, do not exist anymore. We allowed products to actually continue being certified last year because those new categories went into place on October 1st, 2023, as I mentioned. But this year, you will not be able to certify your drug listing if they are included under the old marketing categories that are not relevant or applicable anymore, or the old CFR citations. So OTC drug manufacturers and distributors that have drug listing with FDA and should update their drug list and should certify their drug listing to be current for the next year. If they intend to continue manufacturing and distributing, they must actually access their listing SPLs updated with the correct reference to the marketing category and relevant monograph ID, if applicable, and send those updated versions. And that will actually certify their products throughout the next year. So they don't need to go through the certification. They can't actually go through the certification with those old information.
Thank you so much for that response. And now we'll get in some questions that were addressed to Dr. Julian Chun. Dr. Chun, would I need to create a new NDC for the same formulation with the same characteristics, but manufacturers from two different manufacturers in order to meet a large order?
Thank you for that question. So you would not need to create a new NDC, but you would need to include both establishments in the listing so that it reflects that your drug product is being made by by two different facilities.
Thank you for that response. Another question for you. What should be used as marketing start date when listing as a CMO? In our case, the product itself was initially marketed about a year ago, but our establishment has just begun manufacturing the products. So for the marketing start date, should we use the initial marketing date of the product or the date that our establishment began manufacturing the product?
Thank you for that question. So for the CMO listing, so if you're the contract manufacturer, your listing should reflect the marketing start date when you started making the drug product. So if you just started making it, you should use the date that you started making it. The PLD listing, the private label distributor listing, would have the start marketing date from when they started marketing it, but the CMO listing is when you started manufacturing it. Thank you.
All right. No problem. Thank you again for that response. We actually have another question that came in for you as well. In your example, if Wonder Pharma had a site in New York and one in LA, would that 10-count blister pack have a separate NDC based on the site it was packaged, assuming source NDC is the same?
Thanks for that question. No, the site does not determine the NDC. So a site made in New York and a drug made in New York and a drug made in LA, as long as it's being made the same, should retain the same NDC. And like the previous example, if both establishments should be included in the listing so that each place where the drug is being made is reflected within the drug listing. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that response. Now we'll have another question that came in for Dr. Vikas Arora. Could you please clarify whether the drug listing must be submitted in June and December in order to avoid the inactivation of drug product, even though the no blanket change is only available during October through December?
Thank you for that question. The short answer is no. You will only submit a listing when an update is required. If you've submitted an updated version of your drug listing SPL during the current calendar year, then your listing is certified. If you have not, if October 1st comes around and you have not required any updates to your drug listing throughout the year, and all of your information in your drug listing remains correct, at that time, you could complete a blanket no change certification, certifying that your listing or listings are accurate. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that response. We'll actually address a question now that came in for Dr. Yogesh Paruthi. Can the marketing status be switched from complete back to active to easily relist a drug product?
Thank you for the question. So yes, only if the exact same product resumes commercial distribution, it can be relisted by changing marketing status back to active. But please note, the registrant must propose a new and unique NDC for a drug when there is a change after the drug is initially marketed. So if you are looking for a full list of what changes require new NDC, you want to refer to 21 CFR 207.35. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have another question for you as well. If I am updating outdated information, is it important that the end marketing date selected be a specific date, or can the updating date be used?
Thanks, Nara. So our regulation required that the marketing end date should correspond to the expiration date of the last lot that was manufactured. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much. Okay, I guess maybe sorry, let's see. We still have a few questions that came in, so I guess we'll continue on going with some questions here. Let's see, I can go to some questions now. Back to Dr. Leyla Rahjou-Esfandiary. This question for you, if you are currently manufacturing OTC monograph drugs, what is the fee for 2025?
Thank you for that question. So our office does not set up fees, whether they are AMUFA or GDUFA or other fees that are required to be paid to FDA. You have to, there was a Federal Register notice for the fiscal year 2025 AMUFA fees that was published in July of 2024. So I would invite you, and the link to that FRN is actually included at the end of my presentation on that OTC drugs updates. So you can click on that, and I think you will find it there, but it is basically published and managed by Office of Financial Management in FDA.
All right, thank you so much. And we have another question for you as well. Does the marketing start date need to be updated in eDRLS after the first sales of the product?
So drug listing is, as I mentioned, reflective of commercial distribution. And commercial distribution is something that is defined under our regulations in 21 CFR 207.1. It's basically any distribution. And for example, for imported drugs, it starts with importation. I think that will answer some of the other questions we got on that subject, but please think of it as a commercial distribution, not necessarily sale, and not necessarily the marketing activities, but as it's defined under 207.1.
All right. Thank you again so much for that response and all the information. I think that may be all the questions that we have time for. Um, Once again, just thank you to our presenters for all the excellent information and insights.